White sea bass is a prized nearshore saltwater fish. They were abundant in the early 50s with sport fishing catches averaging 40,000 fish. Then came the round haul and gill nets, resulting in a sharp decline in the white sea bass population. By 1970, catches fell to a few thousand where they stayed for years. In the late 70s, Milt Shedd and Don Kent started California's white sea bass hatchery program at the Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute to help Mother Nature recover the depleted sea bass population. It's our pleasure to have Bill Shedd schooling us on how this incredible concept came about.
It's a monster! Woo!
You got a big fish, look at him.
You know all about this, don't you?
I love this. This is the best.
Stoked on Fishing.
My name's Shay Mack, and this is Stoked on Fishing. Yeah!
Stoked on Fishing is brought to you by Okuma Fishing Tackle, a global leader in design and manufacturing of high-quality fishing tackle, and by Grundens, delivering on 100 years of performance apparel for the avid salt and freshwater angler, and by El Dorado Sport Fishing, 85 feet of deck space for fishermen who want to have some fun in the sun and catch some fish, and by Stoked on Fishing Charters. Fish the local islands and offshore banks out west, or join us on one of our many adventures around the world. And by Suzuki Marine, offering the West Coast the ultimate choice in outboard motors.
Okay, my name is Bill Shedd. I'm the chairman of AFCO, the American Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company. I'm chairman of the Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute. I'm also chairman of the Coastal Conservation Association of California, and I've had the privilege to be around this program for over 60 years.
When does the white sea bass hatchery program get underway?
The white sea bass hatchery program started really in the late 1970s when my dad, Milt Shedd, put up some money, and Don Kent, who was then a graduate student at the Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute, with the edict to go figure out how to raise white sea bass. He had caught a lot of white sea bass as a younger man. They are pretty much gone from the sport fishing community catch. And he wanted to figure out how to help Mother Nature bring back the white sea bass. That was in the late 1970s. And then the formal program, the OREHP program, the Ocean Resources Enhancement Hatchery Program, that started with legislation in the 80s. It was in large part run and developed by the sport fishing community.
Bill, what agencies, both public and private and nonprofit, are involved in the hatchery program?
That's one of the beauties of this white sea bass program. There's a wide range of entities and individuals, organizations, companies, nonprofits, government agencies that have been involved. That is one of the things that makes this so unique. The sport fishing community, for starters, have been involved in this from the very beginning, along with the Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute, whose facility that we're sitting in today. With the sport fishing community, the United Anglers of Southern California, UASC, was very involved in helping to put together the grow-out facility process. And now the Coastal Conservation Association of California, CCA, plays a major role in its leadership in the sport fishing community with this white sea bass program that is so near and dear to the hearts of sport fishermen and women. The California Fish and Game Department initially, and now called the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, has been critical to this program, and it's their program, the Ocean Resources Hatchery Enhancement Program, OREHP, that is ultimately in charge for this. The California Coastal Commission, in approving the songs mitigation, was involved in this process. Edison Company that was involved with the nuclear power plant that was involved with songs mitigation. Legislators, going back to D.D. Alpert for many, many years supporting this program. And more recently, Tasha Horvath has been critically important to the program. She's the one who authored our last legislation that allowed the white sea bass program to continue to exist from a legislative standpoint. There's been a wide range of people that have helped to make this program happen, including the people that run the grow-out facilities have spent, in the last 20 years, volunteer time running the grow-out facilities. It has to be more than 20 or 30 or 40,000 hours of their time raising the fish and looking after them.
All right. Don't fall in, Shay. That'll be an expensive mistake.
I'm Larry George with Southwestern Yacht Club, and I'm in charge of the white sea bass program at the present time. I've been with the program about 9 years, and Gene Geiger, who was with the program since inception, in fact he was a marine biologist, and he asked for help, and came on board and helped him out, and now he has passed about 2 months ago. We receive the fish usually around October each year. One batch, and right now we have about 1,500. We'll get anywhere from 1,200 to 3,000 fish each batch.
And where do they come from, if you don't mind me
Oh, they
asking?
come from Hubbs Hatchery up in Carlsbad, and when we receive them, they're about 3.5 inches long, 2.5, 3.5 inches. And tonight will be the release, and right now they're right about 8.5 to 10 inches.
And what do you feed them? Just is it the same thing all the time, or
Yes, it's a food that's provided by Hubbs, and as they grow, it goes to 3 and then 4 millimeters.
is it a pellet or something?
Yeah, it's a pellet, and it's a sinking pellet. They like to feed on the drop.
Now, where are we going to actually release these today?
Right here, we're just going to lift the end gates up, which are maintaining them in the pen, and they'll be free to swim.
Okay.
Tonight,
How long do they all just go rushing out, or do they
no, actually, the aggressive ones will leave. The non-aggressive ones will stick around. That's their source of food.
Okay.
And after about 3 days, they slowly leave little by little, and then after 3 days, we stop feeding them, and then they all decide it's time to leave. There are steel bars in addition to the
That
gate
was my next
that keeps
question.
the predators out.
So we're going to get some footage of about 1,500. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's right, about 1,500.
Still rolling?
Bob Woodard Sr. Needs to be mentioned. He was actually at the inception of the program. He's the one who pushed for the program and did all the groundwork.
Before it even started.
Yes, and he was the one who got the program to come here.
And you mentioned again, it was, how long has this been here again?
33 years.
33 years.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, well, thanks a lot for your help there. I appreciate it.
All right.
How did you personally become involved in this program?
Well, I personally became involved in the program maybe 60 years ago at the dinner table, just hearing my dad talk about the need for mankind to support Mother Nature, to support bringing back white sea bass that was once an abundant resource. You know, back in the day, sport fishermen caught in the 1960s, sport fishermen caught many years more than 60,000 white sea bass. By the late 70s, that had been cut down to less than a couple thousand a year. So obviously, Mother Nature needed some help to bring back this resource. One of the ways it was helped was the gillnet ban, the nearshore gillnet ban, that helped protect the resource. But Mother Nature also needed additional help, and that's come in the form of this white sea bass hatchery program. My more direct involvement started maybe 30 years ago when I put together the concept and then implemented the plan for the grow-up facilities, where we went to clubs, fishing clubs, got leadership there to build receivers, take on the responsibility at their own expense with their own volunteer time to develop a facility to hold little sea bass that are maybe this big, raise them up to this big, so that in their home harbors they have a much bigger chance of surviving.
How does this hatchery program fill a vital need in California?
So people often ask, why does this white sea bass hatchery program, why is it needed? What good does it do? Well, it gives Mother Nature a chance to bring back a fish that is really important both to commercial fishermen, but especially to the recreational fishing community. We were running out of white sea bass. Anglers knew it. It was hard for us to convince the government that that was the case, but those of us that spent time on the water knew that the white sea bass population, you can't say it was extinct, that wouldn't be accurate, but it was a small fraction of its former self. And it really depends on who you ask, but the anglers, the people working in the program, the anglers who were out catching the fish, the anglers who at one time had an impossible time catching a white sea bass, will tell you that this hatchery program has made a huge impact on the number of white sea bass that are out there, provide an opportunity for grandfathers to take their granddaughters and grandsons fishing to catch a white sea bass. People often ask, where does funding for the hatchery come from? Well, 98% of it comes from recreational anglers in the form of two sources. It comes from their fishing license and the stamp that's placed on, the extra stamp that's placed on their license. I mean, where do you find a situation where the public goes to the government at the state level or at the federal level, but here in the state level, and raises their hand and says, look, I already have a high license fee for my license, but I want to put an extra fee on it. I want to have an additional stamp that will help pay for this hatchery program because this hatchery program is that important to us. Well, that's where a large part of the funds, the OREHP stamp, when people buy a fishing license, that's where a large percentage of the funds come from. People often ask, where does funding for the hatchery come from? Well, 98% of it comes from recreational anglers in the form of two sources. It comes from their fishing license and the stamp that's placed on, the extra stamp that's placed on their license. But in addition, it also comes from the sport fishing community through the sale of fishing tackle and fishing items. The Sport Fish Restoration Act, the SFRA funds, which there's a 10% fee a tax placed on fishing tackle. That money goes into a pot and it gets distributed back to the states. And the state of California receives a significant amount of money from the excise tax funds. That funds 98% of it. The remaining 2% is funded by a stamp that is paid for by the commercial fishing industry. People want to know how many fish are actually being put out. Well, to date, there's been well over 2 million. It's close to 2.5 million now. But it's not just a matter about numbers. Other states, like in Texas, for example, they raise redfish. But they raise redfish that are this big when they're released, small fry by the many millions. We release them at a size that's closer to 8 inches. So their ability to survive is much greater than the smaller fry. So if you equate those 2 million to how many millions it would be if you were looking at it compared to what they do in Texas at their size, it's not 2 million, it's probably closer to 20 or 30 or 40 million. But the 2 million white sea bass that are released have shown that they're healthy, have shown that they have the ability to survive, and that's been a real key to the success in this program. Coastal Conservation Associate of California, CCA Cal, plays a huge role in this program because it is the kind of the tip of the spear for the sport fishing community with the Fish and Wildlife Department, with the legislature, the state government in running this program. It's also a supporter of the Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute in its efforts. It's got to go collect white sea bass. So members of CCA, they collect the white sea bass that are needed. Also, it is the CCA Cal White Sea Bass Grow-Out Facility Committee, which is all those groups that I talked about, these 30 or 40,000 hours of volunteer time that they've contributed over the years. That is a CCA Cal function that helps to organize that group and helps to coordinate and organize their activities so that the state agencies and hubs understand what the sport fishing community is doing to help this program, what those grow-out facilities are doing. CCA Cal coordinates the efforts of the sport fishing community with the white sea bass hatchery program. Well, another way that CCA helps to serve and support this program is you've got to collect the heads of the adult white sea bass because they got to be checked for the tag. So how do you collect the heads? Well, CCA has paid for freezers at landings and help set up a process where anglers can take their after they've caught their white sea bass, clean their white sea bass, cut the white sea bass head off. They can leave it at the landing. CCA has also helped literally to drive those heads back down here to the hatchery so that they can test them for one of the tags. The big question that everybody asks is, how successful has this white sea bass hatchery program been? Well, the answer to that really depends on who you ask. If you ask the anglers, if you ask the people in the program, they say that it's been widely successful. If you ask some people within the Fish and Game Department, within Fish and Wildlife, if you ask some others outside of the program, they would say, well, it hasn't been that successful because there's been less than 1% of the adult wild fish that have been tested have a tag that's still placed in them. Well, how can anglers see so many fish How can there be so many young sea bass that are collected in the gillnet survey, where they collect white sea bass that are anywhere from this size to this size, not yet legal? And they check those fish that are right in with wild fish, and almost every time there's double digits of those fish are hatchery fish. How can they survive to be 4 months, 6 months, a year, and then all of a sudden, when they get to be bigger, less than 1% are part of the population? Makes no sense. The only thing that we've believed for some time is that little tag that's as big as a flea, that it's worked its way out, or it's lost its ability to be magnetized. So there's a real conflict in how the actual wild population has been impacted. That conflict is beginning to be resolved with a whole new series of genetic studies, where Hubbs has worked with the folks from South Carolina, and they now are looking at white sea bass DNA, and the early results of that testing still to be finalized, but the early results show that it's not less than 1% of the fish, that wild population, that are hatchery fish, that it's somewhere in the double digits. And there's some recent study being done that within the next few months is going to be made available, that I personally, I'll bet $1 to a donut that you're going to see that there's going to be a much, much higher percentage of wild fish that are hatchery fish than was previously understood by the naysayers and by many in the state government. And that's going to give us the final answer of just how successful this hatchery has been. But we've believed in the sport fishing community for a long time that this program has been highly successful. Anglers often ask me, so Bill, what can I do for the white sea bass program? How can I help? For starters, support CCA Cal. If you want to help this program, if you want to help the sport fishing community, support CCA Cal. In addition to that, you can help support the grow-off facilities. There's 8 or 9 of them up and down the coast now. So get involved with helping to raise the white sea bass. Literally, help feed them, help take care of them. You'll find it rewarding. You'll find you're working with a great group of people. Continue to tell your friends about the value of this program. Continue to help CCA in their push to educate legislators about how important this program is. Continue to buy a license and pay the fee. Continue to buy fishing tackle, which also helps to fund this program. Help to make yourself more aware of what happens with this program, so you can help at the level of helping us communicate to the state legislature, to the Fish and Game Department, and to the Coastal Commission, also to the California Fish and Game Commission, how important this program is. If you really want to help, there's all kind of ways you can do it. So I just would say, step up and help. And one big way that you can help is when you catch a white sea bass, you obviously are going to cut the head off at some point. When you do, save it. Take it to a landing. Take it in your freezer at home. Put it in a plastic bag. Remember where you caught it. Remember the date that you caught it. Get a card from the Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute and fill it out, and let's find out if it has a tag in it or not. That's a huge way you can help.
I'm Mike Shane. I'm with Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute, and my title is Director of Fisheries Replenishment Operations. So my role, I wear various hats. My primary role here as the director for the program is to oversee the daily operations of the hatchery. That is everything from broodstock collection to juvenile grow out to transporting the fish to the grow out sites. We have probably 15 plus staff that I oversee on a daily basis. The maintenance of the facility is a huge undertaking as well. So I have all those responsibilities, and of course, managing the staff that really do all the work and take care of all those things.
Please tell us how this saltwater hatchery process is first developed.
This hatchery was built in actually 1995, but we've been operating this program since the early 1980s. This program was actually started and funded by legislation that I think Bill explained earlier. To operate this, they wanted to decide a fish that we could enhance in the ocean, and so they picked white sea bass. And so then we as contractors came in, built various facilities, but this facility in 1995 was built, again, with marine aquaculture in mind, with the white sea bass in mind. We created the layout, the floor plan, the broodstock tanks, and subsequently the whole process of what you see in the hatchery now looks vastly different than it did 20 years ago. The systems have all changed, the technology has changed, and we continue to improve on this husbandry and the hatchery systems in here. So it's it's a ever-growing process, growing these fish out, learning about especially the larval fish. So they move from system to system, and each system, again, has changed over the time, and each system has gotten better with our ability to be more successful like rearing these fish. We hatch thousands of white sea bass a year. As an example, one female, when a female spawns in our tanks here, one female can produce about 1.5 million eggs. We don't set up 1.5 million eggs. We set up knowing what our survivorship's going to be. So we'll set up, a couple 100,000 eggs. And then out of that 100,000 eggs, we'll then get at least up to 15,000 fish that we can release into the ocean. So our success has been anywhere from 30 to 50% survivorship from an egg all the way up to a 50-day post-hatch fish. So that's pretty significant and pretty good for a fish hatchery. So again, it's hundreds of thousands of eggs a year. Our goal and our working model right now is to release about 100,000 fish a year.
We're just warming up at Carlsbad Hatchery in Southern California. I'm hoping that you had some patience to learn more about this incredible white sea bass hatchery program that has been in motion since the 1970s. Next week on Stoked on Fishing, we're wrapping things up with Mike Shane. Then we're going to fish with Jock and Charlie Albright, who are part of the CCA. They volunteer their time, effort, and boat to help catch the broodstock white sea bass. I'm tagging along to film the adventure and hope to learn even more about the Hubbs SeaWorld Research Institute White Sea Bass Hatchery Program. We'll see you next week.